Thank you for standing. Please be seated. We're ready for the presentation of evidence. Are you ready to go?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Schulte?
We have to leave the bench for just 1 second.
Sure. Okay. Make that offer right now. We'll get into evidence, and if you want to refer to it, it's already there. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Your Honor. This time, the state would move to offer into evidence State's Exhibit 1, State's Exhibit 2. By stipulation, State's Exhibit 1 and Andy Menken, the defendant's cell phone records from February 1, 2013 through April 16, 2013.
I'm stipulating the receive.
Secondly, the mobility or cell phone for the item that's been identified as a track phone. State would offer that as State's Exhibit 2. It's been stipulated that would be the evidence.
Yes. Receive. Yes.
At this time, Your Honor, the state would call Randy Aschinger to the witness stand. I'm going to grab him.
Sure. Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do. Take the chair right over there and speak up so we can all.
Mr. Aschinger, I'm going to call you Randy. Is that okay?
Yes.
Randy, can you please state your full name and spell it for the court reporter here?
Randy Lee Aschinger, R-A-N-D-Y, L-E-E, A-S-C-H-I-N-G-E-R.
Because we have not yet moved into the 21st century, we don't have microphones set up. So I'm going to ask that your testimony be directed towards the jury and then use your outside voice inside so that they can hear you clearly. Randy, how old are you?
59,
Where do you live?
rural Lakeview, Iowa.
How long have you lived there?
Since 1981.
You were born and raised?
I was born and raised in Sac County.
And your occupation?
Farmer
And how long have you been doing that?
since 1972.
And, okay, and your family?
I have a wife, Sandy, 3 boys, Tim, Grant, and Stephen,
Okay. And grandchildren?
5 grandchildren.
And the respective wives of each of your sons are who?
Jessica is Tim's wife, Megan is Grant's wife, and Elizabeth is Stephen's wife.
You had an extramarital relationship with Elizabeth, is that right?
Yes.
And about when did that begin?
August of 2007.
And continued from that time forward in what manner?
Sexual.
And that continued from 2007 on and off through when?
Through August 2011.
It's not something you're proud of, is it?
No, it's not.
This is very difficult for you, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Has Elizabeth, prior to April 8, 2013, has she ever tried to extort money from you?
Yes, she has.
And in what manner or capacity did she try to do that?
She asked for $3,000 at one time in exchange for her not showing my wife some text messages that I had sent her.
And the nature of those text messages?
Most of them, not all of them, but some of them were sexual.
And about when was this? You said in March of 2013?
Yes, it was.
And did you pay the $3,000?
Yes, I did.
And was there any other time after that that she tried to do this?
Yes, there was.
When was that?
On approximately March 25th or 6th,
Of what year?
2013.
And if you could to explain to the jury how that came about.
Well, on St. Patrick's Day, Stephen and Elizabeth had gone to Des Moines to a St. Patrick's parade,
And Stephen is?
my son.
Okay.
And while they were there, Stephen looked at Elizabeth's phone and saw a message. I'm not sure if it was a text message or a Facebook message from Andy Menken that had sexual undertones to it. So there was a fight between those two, and I found out about it. And later approached Elizabeth about it. And basically she said it was none of my business. You know, shut the hell up. You know, leave them alone. I said, okay. And then shortly after that, I get this message or phone call saying that since I messed with their lives, that I should pay them $5,000.
And who'd you receive that from?
Elizabeth.
Okay.
Well, I said, this has got to end. This has got to end. And I said, there's going to be no more threats, no more money. I said, I'm done with this.
Randy, how do you know the defendant? Do you know the defendant?
I had met him once.
And explain to the jury how you came to know him or the nature of your encounter when you met him.
It was at a party at Stephen and Elizabeth's house in Carroll.
You ever given the defendant your phone number?
No.
Have you ever received a phone call from the defendant?
No.
You testified earlier that you confronted Elizabeth about communications. What exactly did you confront her about again?
I asked her if she was having an affair with Andy Menken, and she said no.
Now, that was the last incident of extortion from Elizabeth that you mentioned that occurred approximately when?
March 25th or 6th.
Okay. I want to turn your attention to April 8 of 2013. Did you receive a phone call from somebody or a message about farmland?
Yes, I did.
Explain to the jury about when you got it and the substance of that phone message.
After, between 9 and 9:30 in the morning, noticed a message on my phone, read it, and it was a message said, this is Bob Wohlers. I have come in contact with some land over in your area and was looking for someone to farm it. And he said he would get back to me over the noon hour or later in the day. So that's what that.
And you actually heard a voice. This is a voicemail.
Yes.
Okay. And did you know the caller's voice?
No, I didn't.
Describe the caller's voice to the jury.
Well, it was kind of a deep voice, matter of fact, to the point.
Male, female?
Male.
And did you hear from that same individual again, or did they get a call from that same phone number again?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And when was that?
That was over the noon hour, about 12:40.
Describe to the jury the nature of that communication, if you would, please.
Well, when I answered, the guy said, "You listen, and you listen good." I said, "Okay." And he says, "I know what you've been doing or what you're trying to do with your daughter-in-law. I have your phone messages. I can monitor your phone and her phone. And how much do you think it'd be worth to not have those messages seen by your wife?" And I said, "Well," I said, "I really don't have any idea. Why don't you tell me?" So he said, "Well, I like the number 5. And I said, "Well, what's that mean?" He said, "I like 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. So I said, $55,555, is that what you're saying? He said, "Yes." And he says, "I know you can get it out of the bank account, $10,000 a day, without the IRS doing an audit." So I just let him go on, and he said, "I will get in touch with you again, get it, put it in a black duffel bag. I will get in touch with you again on where and when we will meet." And he says, "When we meet, I will have the phone and the messages and the thumb drive or hard drive, whatever he had. After I get the money," he says, "I will put that in the bag and return it to the place I picked it up." So hung up, and that was the end of that conversation.
Randy, what did you understand, the male caller, what did you understand the messages? He's telling you he has messages, right?
Right.
What did you understand those to be?
The text messages that I had sent Elizabeth.
Okay. After this phone call, what did you do after hearing this?
Well, I called Elizabeth and asked her if she knew this number. I told her the number, 319-610-7398. I said, "Do you recognize that number?" And she said, "No." And she asked why, so I told her what had happened. And she really didn't say anything too much after that. She said, "I have no knowledge of it. I don't know anything about it."
In that phone call to Elizabeth, how soon after you received a call from this male caller who identified himself as Bob Walters, right?
Right.
How soon after did you call Elizabeth?
As pretty much just after I got off the phone with Bob Walters.
When's the next time you heard from Bob Walters?
Well, that afternoon.
And do you remember whether it was by a voice communication or text communication?
It was a text. Let's see.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Ashinger, I'm showing you what I've identified and marked as State's Exhibit 3. Can you look over that, please? What does that show?
That is the text I got from that number.
Okay. And can you read it out loud to the jury, please?
Yes. Forgot to tell you, tell no one. Lizzie will play dumb anyway. Don't fuck with me, Randy. Your $55,555 will go up $5K if you do. Talk to you Wednesday, bud.
And those messages that you just read were sent to you at about what time, do you recall?
Oh, 1:15, 1:30, somewhere in there.
At this time, the state would move to enter State's Exhibit 3 into evidence.
I have no objection. Proceed.
After receiving that communication, I forgot to tell you, tell no one. Then, did you hear from that same phone number, that caller again?
I did later in the afternoon.
Okay, and explain to the jury how that came about.
I think Elizabeth had tried to call me, or we did talk. I was out at the golf course that afternoon with some friends, and Elizabeth had texted me and or called me, and shortly after that, well, it was a while after that, I got another call from that 319 number. And it said, or he said, I see you tried to talk to Elizabeth. And he says, again, don't fuck with me. It'll cost you more, $5,000 more if you do. And let's just keep it at $55,555. Okay, bud? That's what he said.
And that was through a voicemail, or that's through a text, or a voice communication?
That was voice communication.
Okay. Then later in the day, did you have further conversation with this guy?
Yes, I did.
Was that in the form of a phone call, voicemail, text communication?
It was a text.
Okay. Yeah, Coach, Your Honor.
You don't need to ask.
Thank you, Your Honor. Randy, I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 4. Could you tell the jury what State's Exhibit 4 is?
It's a text message from that 319 number.
And what does that text message say? Can you read it?
Just a little proof to make you a believer out of you. It takes a bit for my phone to update, but I see you tried calling Mark a couple times. Be careful. The stakes now will cost you $5K. Let's stay at $55,555. Okay, bud?
State moved to enter State's Exhibit 4 in evidence.
Let's see.
I'm stipulating for all of the
Okay.
text messages.
The phone call that you had right before this, and I forgot to ask you, did the caller on the other end sound like the same individual?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Now, I'm going to back up just for a second. At some point in time in that day, April 8, 2013, did you go to law enforcement with this?
Yes, I did.
And could you explain to the jury when you went and who you went with?
Yes, at approximately 4 o'clock, I came to the courthouse, and my wife works here at the courthouse, and she was here. I went to her office and explained what was going on to her. And told her what had happened, and she said, well, we're going to go to the sheriff's office, and I said, that's where I'm headed. So she came with me, and we walked down to the sheriff's office, and the sheriff was in. I asked if I could talk to him, and he said, sure. So I went in the room with him and explained what had happened. That I had gotten a phone call earlier in the day, a man trying to extort $55,555 out of me.
And Randy, while you were with the sheriff, did you receive that text communication that you had just identified?
Yes, I did.
Did you provide all these text communications to the sheriff?
Yes, I did.
How did you do that?
I forwarded them off my phone to his.
So, you meet with the sheriff, you tell him what's going on, what's the plan of action, or what's the sheriff's diagnosis?
Well, that day he says, what do you want me to do? And I said, well, I want to find out who's doing this. So I said, okay, we'll figure something out. And that's kind of where we left it that day.
Okay, and that day being April 8th?
April 8th.
Okay. What happened April 9th then?
On April 9th, I think it was right after lunch, Sheriff McClure called me and asked if I would put a wiring device on and go down and talk to Elizabeth at Anytime Fitness. And I said I would.
And did you?
Yes, we did.
Okay, and explain to the jury, just you leave SAC and ultimately end up at Anytime Fitness in Carroll, right?
That's correct.
What's the significance of Anytime Fitness in Carroll?
Anytime Fitness is was owned by Elizabeth and Stephen.
And who else?
And my wife and I.
And did Elizabeth work there?
Elizabeth was running Anytime Fitness.
She was the manager.
She was the manager.
And Anytime Fitness is what?
It is a exercise gym in Carroll.
So you leave SAC with the sheriff, and you go down to Anytime Fitness in Carroll, right?
That's right.
Okay, then what happened?
I went into Elizabeth's office and had my phone, and I let her listen to that voicemail. And I said, you recognize that voice? And she said, no. And I said, well, do you recognize this number? And I told her 319-610-7398. And she said, no. And she says, why are you asking me these questions? And I said, well, I don't know. It's just funny that when I talk to you, I get a phone call or a text message from this number saying, has your name in it. I'm just wondering why they're connecting, he's connecting you in these messages.
And how did that conversation then end with Elizabeth?
Well, she got angry with me and got mad and said, get the hell out of my office. So I left.
And then what happened?
Well, I gave the device back to the sheriff and we went home. A few hours, no, an hour later, probably, Elizabeth calls me and said, I need to talk to you again. can you be down in Carroll in 45 minutes? And I said, yes, I can. We'll meet at McDonald's, 45 minutes. I said, okay. So I called the sheriff and said, told him that Elizabeth had called and wanted me to come back down to Carroll. So I said, okay, do you want me to wire up again? And he said, yes. I'll meet you in Auburn. So we met at Auburn. They put the device on, and I drove to Carroll. On my way to Carroll, Elizabeth called me and changed her mind about meeting at McDonald's, decided to meet at Anytime Fitness. So that's where I went.
So you physically walk into Anytime Fitness for the second time in the same day, right?
Yes,
And you have another conversation with Elizabeth?
yes.
Explain to the jury what that conversation entailed.
I'm not positive. She wanted to see my phone. She says, I want to see your phone. And I said, well, it's out in the pickup. So I went outside, got my phone, brought it back. She wanted to see the text messages. So I showed them to her. She took my phone and was reading them. And I saw her doing something on the phone. And I said, what are you doing? Nothing, never mind. And I said, give me my phone back. And she said, just wait. So her phone was laying there, so I grabbed her phone and I said, now, give me my phone back or I'm going to look at your phone. And she says, okay, we yelled at each other for a little bit. It got a little heated. And she accused me of trying to set her up. And I said, all I'm trying to do is find a name to that voice and that number. And she got angry with me, and I saw that Andy Menken was in the gym that day, and I said, well, do you want me to just go talk to Andy Menken right now, myself? And she says, oh, you're going to be Mr. Tough Guy now? And I said, no, I'm not trying to be Mr. Tough Guy. I'm just trying to figure this thing out. And she got angry with me and said, get the hell out of my gym. So I left.
So you saw Andy Menken in the gym during the second visit to Anytime Fitness in Carroll?
Yes, I did.
I'm going to back up to the first time that you were at Carroll at Anytime Fitness. What did Elizabeth say, if anything, about a prank?
Well, she just told me that, she says, I think someone's just pulling a prank on you.
So after the second time you were kicked out of your gym at Anytime Fitness by Elizabeth, then what happened? You're still wearing a wire?
Yes.
Okay. Then what do you do?
I met the sheriff and gave the wire back to him.
And all this meeting at Anytime Fitness in Carroll takes place on the 9th.
Yes.
Did you have any communication with Elizabeth following that?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and explain to the jury the form and substance of that communication.
It was a phone call,
Okay,
and she had tried to call me several times and I didn't answer. And finally I just decided, well, I'll answer and see what she wants. So I answered, and she said, why are you trying to pin this on me? And I said, I'm not. I'm just trying to find out what's going on. And she said, I have nothing to do with this. And I said, well, then you have nothing to worry about. She says, well, if you're so worried about this, why don't you just go to the cops? And I said, well, maybe I already have. And that's basically where that conversation ended.
so turn your attention then to April 10, 2013, which would be Wednesday, right?
Right.
Did you have any communication with this unidentified male caller or Bob Waller that day?
Yes, I did.
And approximately what time and what was the nature of that?
Approximately 8:45 in the morning.
Okay, and
text message, let's see.
Your Honor, man,
Can't remember.
I'm gonna approach the witness. Randy, I'm showing you what's been identified as State's Exhibit 5. Can you tell the jury what State's Exhibit 5 is, please?
Yes, it's a text message.
Okay, is that the text messages that you received on that day?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and can you read it for the jury, please?
Okay, it says, we will probably meet Saturday night. Tell you where later. Quit being dumb and just get the money. Don't give your phone to Lizzie again. You haven't talked to cops, so just stop. I just want the $55,555 and I will leave you alone, promise. Don't make me go to Sac City Courthouse and show your wifey what I have. And then I think it's it. There's another part of this yet.
Do you recall what it said?
Talk to you Saturday or even could be Sunday.
I'm showing you what I'll identify as the second page of State's Exhibit 5. Is that what you just described?
Yes. It
Okay.
says, talk to you Saturday probably, may even be Sunday though.
Okay. This time, State would move to the State's Exhibit 5, pages 1 and 2.
No objection.
You see,
So then, following that Wednesday text message that you just read, when's the next communication you had with Mr. Wallers with that same unidentified male caller?
It would have been Saturday the 13th.
Okay, and that was approximately what time?
I'm not sure. I can't remember.
Was it in the morning? Was it in the afternoon?
I'm not sure. I'm sorry, I can't.
That's fine. Showing you what's identified as State's Exhibit 6. Now, you said you got a text message or communication on this day, and you could identify for the jury whether that is it or not.
Yes, it is.
Okay, and what does it say?
Shooting for 7:30 or so in Glidden. Don't be late.
Can you circle that portion, please, that you just read off? Let the record reflect defendant circled the portion that you just read off. State would move to enter State's Exhibit 6.
No objection.
You see,
What do you do? Saturday morning, Saturday, you receive this text message.
well, I called, related to the sheriff, and he told me to come up, make a plan on what we're gonna do.
And what was that plan?
Well, he asked if I had any money for the drop, and I said, yes, I had some. He said, would you be willing to put it up to do this? And I said, yes, I would. So, came up here and brought the money up. I took photocopies of it myself at home. Brought the money up, gave it to the sheriff. He put it in a backpack bag along with a GPS receiver, and then placed that in a plastic garbage bag, which I was told to.
Randy, where did you have the money?
Where did I have?
Yeah, where did you have the money at?
At my home?
And your home's in Sac County?
Yes.
Showing you what's been identified as State's Exhibit 7. Can you tell the jury what State's Exhibit 7 is?
Pictures of $100 bills.
Okay, and where, I mean, did you make that? Did the sheriff make that?
I did those on my copy machine.
So the pictures of the $100 bills that appear in this State's Exhibit 7 are the same monies that are used for the drop?
Yes.
Okay. State would move to enter State's Exhibit 7 into evidence.
No objection.
You got, excuse me.
Receipt.
Okay. You got the money, you got the plan, you're to be at Glen by 7:30, right?
That's right.
Okay, so what did you do then?
Well, they put the wiring device on me again that night. And so we left the courthouse here, the sheriff's office, approximately 45 minutes early to get to Glidden. So we drove to Glidden. I pulled into the parking lot of there's a church on the north side of the highway. And about the time I got stopped, pulled in there, my phone rang. And it was this same individual again.
And same individual, same mail caller,
Yes,
same phone number?
yes.
And was this a call or a text?
It was a call.
And what did the caller say?
Caller said, plans have changed. He said, we're going to Boone. Do you know where Boone is? And I said, yes. I said, drive to Boone, go to the Walmart parking lot, and wait for instructions. So I called Sheriff and told him that I'd gotten that call and was headed to Boone, and he said, stop, don't go. Wait for me, go back to Casey's, get a pop, do something, wait for me to get my guys to Boone. So I went back to Casey's, and Deputy Eric met me there, and we sat and waited until the sheriff called him and told us that we could come on ahead and go to Boone. So that's why I went to Boone and went to the parking lot, sat there and waited.
And then what happened? Did you receive another communication from?
Well, yes, but Deputy Eric contacted me and said the wiring device batteries must have run dead. He said, I'm going to go into Walmart and get some new batteries. Come in there and I'll meet you in the restroom and we'll change the batteries. So, okay, so I went in the restroom, changing the batteries and my phone rang. And it was the same individual telling me, giving me directions on where to drop the money.
What the individual gave you directions?
Yes.
Like what kind of directions?
He told me to go to the four-way stop west of Walmart on Highway 30, turn north on it's the main road there. I don't remember the name of the road. But go north on that road up to the stoplight at Park Avenue. Take a left on Park Avenue. Go to the bottom of the hill, and there will be an S curve sign. And he said, stop there, put the bag beside that sign, get back in your truck, charge your vehicle, go to the corner ahead, turn around, and go back and leave. Go back to where you came from.
Did you do all this?
Yes, I did.
Randy, I'm showing you what I've marked, State's Exhibit 8 and State's Exhibit 9, if you could, one at a time. Tell me, if you can, what State's Exhibit 8 is.
A picture of the Walmart parking lot, Highway 30. the road going north, the main intersection there, the city of Boone,
So is it an aerial shot of Boone?
aerial shot, yes.
Could you, with this marker here, identify the Walmart parking lot with the WM, make it small, so. And then if you could, mark the route you took to the money drop with that marker there.
I can't see the streets on here.
There's a major intersection.
It's right there.
That's fine.
I can't tell which one the intersection is for sure. That map, it's too small.
Record reflect, defendant used a black marker to identify Walmart with the WM, and then his route to what you believe to be is the general location of the drop.
Well, I didn't mark turning left on that street there. I have it going up to the intersection, but I don't have it turning left.
Okay, but the instructions again were to do what?
Turn left at Park Avenue,
Okay, and then
proceed down the hill to a S-curve sign.
showing you the marked States Exhibit 9. Can you tell me what that is?
It's a picture of that S-curve sign.
The actual sign.
Yes.
And is that a fair and accurate depiction of the way that sign looks during the day?
Exactly.
Okay, and if you could, with this magic marker, drop an X as to where you put the money. Say we move to exhibits 8 and 9. So after you dropped the money, Randy, then what happened?
I just went back to, actually the McDonald's parking lot and waited.
And then,
I got a call from Sheriff and said that they had lost the individual that picked up the money. The money had been picked up, but but they had lost the individual that had picked it up and ran into the park with it.
Did you ever get your money back?
Yes, I did. They did find the money in the park, but later on that night, they told me to go on home, that there was nothing else they could do. And they went back to the park and they recovered the money. It was out of the bag, but everything was laying on the grass and the money was under the bag.
Randy, after this, did you ever hear again from Bob Wallers or the unidentified mail caller?
No, I did not.
No text, no voice calls from that 319-404-5948 number?
Nothing.
Excuse me, the 319-269-8401 number. Okay. You stated the number earlier. What was the number that called you, Bob Wallers?
319-610-7398.
Showing you what's been entered into evidence in State's Exhibit 2. Is that the same phone number you just described?
Which one?
These records are what have been previously stipulated to.
Yes.
That's the same
Yeah,
number?
that is the number.
Okay.
Let me see that.
How's this ordeal been on you?
Been tough. I feel ashamed. It's been hard on my family, my wife. So, we're struggling.
I have no further questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Mr. Aschinger, I don't think I know you. I don't look familiar to you.
Well, I've seen you before.
Okay. I'm just sort of wondering, because I do know your wife. Obviously, she works here and works in an area that I work in. I know her very well. I know your son, Tina, and Jessica. You live next door quite a while. So I just want you to know that, you know, I have liked and respected members of your family. Found them to be good, honorable people, nice people, really nice people. So I'm not really the enemy here, I'm just trying to get at the truth, okay? Which you had going with Elizabeth in. You said it ended in 2011, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Who ended it? How did that come?
It was probably pretty much a mutual agreement. Actually, my son and her were going to be married, and we decided it was just not right. It wasn't right to begin with.
Okay. So at the point that you and your son, that Elizabeth and your son Stephen are about to get married, you decide this isn't a good idea.
Right.
And you're stating that it was a mutual decision that both you and Elizabeth made.
Yeah.
After the breakup of the relationship, how much contact did you continue to have with Elizabeth?
I still had contact with her. We would text. You know, it wasn't a ugly breakup. We didn't fight. You know.
Did Elizabeth at any time give you any indication that she was upset by the situation?
After.
Yes.
After the 11th.
Yes.
Yes.
You had a series of text messages and phone calls from Mr. Waller,
Yes.
or a guy calling himself Mr. Waller. Did you ever determine who that was?
I did not. The sheriff did.
Okay. And what did you learn from what the sheriff learned?
The sheriff told me it was Jason Heffelmeyer.
Okay. So all these calls are coming from Jason Heffelmeyer's phone, the text messages are coming from Jason Heffelmeyer's phone. Let's go back to Andy Menken a little bit. You said you met him once at a party at Stephen's house, Stephen and Elizabeth's house,
Yes.
in Carroll.
Yes.
Anything particular happened at that party?
No.
Were you upset that Mr. Menken was there?
I was wondering why he was there.
Okay, now that wasn't the question. The question
Was I upset?
Yeah.
Yes.
Why were you upset?
I didn't think he should be there.
Did you think that he and Elizabeth were having some type of a relationship that you particularly didn't like?
At that time?
Yes.
No.
Well, then why were you upset that her friend Mr. Menken was at a party that maybe they had been invited to?
Well, mainly because my son was upset about it.
Okay, so what ended up happening?
I think they just left after a little while. They didn't stay long.
Okay. Now, when you say they left, you know who he left with?
Yes, he left with Jason Heffelmeyer.
Okay, was your understanding that they were friends?
Yes.
How much money did you put in the bag that you dropped in Boone at the sign?
$2,900.
And you got all of that back?
Yes, I did.
I mean, it was all there.
Yes, it was.
You didn't at any time lose the money and then have to do something to get it back?
I don't understand.
Okay, the sheriff didn't confiscate it and then you had to go get the money back from him, or how did that happen?
Yes, the sheriff retrieved it, brought it back here to the courthouse, and I came back up here and picked it up.
It was all there.
Yes, it was.
So in the end, you're not out any money.
No, I'm not.
And finally, just because I didn't get it, can you tell me what that phone number was that was calling you and texting you? The 319.
319-610-7398.
Okay, I have no questions.
Briefly, Randy, you testified that your sexual relationship with Elizabeth ended in 2011.
Yes.
And when you mean sexual relationship, is that actual sex?
Yes.
Did, at any point after that time, did you send or receive sexually explicit text messages from Elizabeth?
Yes.
And that continued till approximately?
March of 2013.
And when was the party that you just described?
Oh, I really don't know for sure. It was not that long after the kids had moved to Carroll and had purchased the Anytime Fitness. So that was purchased in March of 2012. So
this party that you described a year prior to you ever received these calls from?
yes.
I don't know anything further.
Nothing further?
Thank you, sir. You can step down.
This time, Your Honor, the state would call Sheriff McClure.
Stand if you want. Solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Sheriff?
Sheriff, could you please state your full name and spell it for the record?
Kenneth William McClure, MCCLURE.
Like my last witness, I'm going to ask you to use your outside voice inside because of the fact that you have no microphone. It just doesn't carry all that well, and then direct your answers to the jury. You're the sheriff of Sac County,
Yes, I am.
and how long have you been the sheriff of Sac County?
10 years.
And before that?
Before that, I was a deputy sheriff for Sac County for about 14 months. Prior to that employment, I worked for the city of Storm Lake as a police officer and police detective. And before that, I worked for the city of Sac City as a police officer.
So right now, your job responsibilities and duties as the elected county sheriff are what?
Managing a staff of 22 people, running a jail and a communication center, on top of overseeing criminal investigations and the day-to-day workload that comes with the sheriff's office.
And let's get right to it. On April 8, 2013, did you have occasion to meet a Randy Aschinger?
Yes, I did.
How'd you come to meet him?
Randy came into my office at late afternoon, 4:20, 4:25 that afternoon.
What did Randy tell you?
Randy told me that he was being extorted and wanted us to help him with this.
Did he send you messages?
And as the week goes on, Randy forwarded me messages that he was receiving via his cell phone.
And move back up here for a second. Do you know the defendant?
Yes.
How do you know the defendant?
I worked with Andy for a couple of years when he was a juvenile court officer.
Your friend?
Yes.
Back to April 8th meeting with Randy. How did you leave that with him?
Pretty much left it to keep us informed on what's going on, and Randy thought from the very beginning that Andy Menken was involved, so we told him to keep in contact with us, send us what you have, and we started subpoenaing cell phone records.
Did Randy come in by himself or with who?
Randy first came in, when he first showed up, he was with his wife Sandy, and then I asked Sandy to leave, and Randy and I talked after that privately.
Did Randy tell you about the affair?
Yes, he did.
So, following Monday the 8th, April 8, 2013, when was your next communication with Randy?
It would have been following day, the 9th. We called Randy and asked Randy if he would be willing to wear a wire or a recording device and go to Anytime Fitness and talk with Elizabeth, his daughter-in-law.
Why Elizabeth, I guess? How did that come about?
It just kind of seemed that during the interview with Randy, he told us that Elizabeth was trying to get money out of him and that she had asked for $3,000 and then asked for $5,000. And I think he kind of he hoped that she wasn't involved, but we wanted to make sure she was or wasn't.
So what was the next course of action for you?
We met with Randy Aschinger at our office. We secured him with a recording device. We then met him at Walmart in Carroll, and then made sure everything was working, and then we followed him to Anytime Fitness.
Approximately how long is the drive between your office here to Carroll Anytime Fitness?
Probably 30 minutes.
So you followed Randy to Carroll Anytime Fitness, and he's wearing a wire. Did you, what were you able to observe either visually or with your ears during that encounter?
The encounter when he went to Anytime Fitness?
Yes.
We followed him. We parked in the parking lot. When I say we, Brian Eric, who's the deputy sheriff, was also with me. We watched Randy go into Anytime Fitness, and then we could hear the conversation between Randy and Elizabeth. And it went, he asked her about what was going on. He played the voice message from the Bob Wallers. She goes, I don't know anything about it. Don't worry about it. You're being pranked. He pushes it a little bit more about you wanted $3,000 and then you wanted $5,000. I wouldn't give it to you. And then at that point, she became very mad and told him to get out of the place.
Randy leave then?
Yes.
Okay. Then what happened?
We came back to Sac City. A short time later, we had left Anytime Fitness, recovered our property back, our recording devices from Randy. We went our way, he went his way. We get back to the office. I'm going to say sometime 2 or 2:30 in the afternoon, he calls me and says that Elizabeth had just called him and wanted to meet with him in 45 minutes at McDonald's in Carroll. We said, fine, we'll meet you in Auburn. So we met him at Sparky's in Auburn, and then we rehooked the wiring system back up. While we're between Auburn and Carroll, she calls him and says, meet me at Anytime Fitness. So that's ultimately where we ended up the second time.
And Randy again was wearing a wire?
Yes.
Okay. And he goes in, were you able to hear any of the conversation you had with Elizabeth?
Yes, again, it was a short conversation. She wanted to know if he had his phone. He said, yes, it's on his truck. And then we saw him exit or come out of the building, get into his truck, and walk back into the building. Then she's looking at his phone. You can hear her say, give me your phone. And then he grabs her phone, and they're arguing back and forth about, give me my phone, give me this, give me that. And then she makes some comment about something to the effect that for a guy who's being extorted, you don't seem too upset about it. And then she says, get out, and again, he left.
And you left, then what?
We left, then the following day, been Wednesday, the 10th, he forwards me an email or a text message, something to the effect of, don't give Lizzie your phone, don't screw this up, something to that effect. So we decided that we would, if this extortion plot went through, there was a message about maybe meeting Saturday or Sunday, that we would set up a sting operation and follow this through and see what we can come up with.
And when's the next communication after that you have with Randy?
You come back into my office that Wednesday, and we talked briefly again about the whole case and what was going on. I wanted to make sure, honestly, that Randy wasn't involved, and that this just wasn't a plot, because initially it sounded like that maybe there was some text messages between Andy and Elizabeth that he found that was upset, and we wanted to make sure that, maybe he wasn't setting her up, because she had said, you're setting me up. So we wanted to be sure before we went any further that we weren't wasting our time.
And then after that?
After that, we didn't have any conversation until I believe it was that Saturday.
And what was the nature of that Saturday conversation?
That Saturday, he calls me late morning, I'm going to say 10:30 in the morning, and says, I got a text message, they want to meet tonight in Glidden at 7:30. In the meantime, between the Wednesday and the Saturday, we had set up surveillance teams in case that were to happen, so that we'd be ready to go. I asked Randy to be at our office. I think it was like 6 o'clock that night. We had our surveillance teams here ready to go, and Randy shows up. He provided us with $2,900 and $100 bills as bait money. We had acquired a GPS tracker during the week, and we decided to put the money in a GPS tracker in a bag and seal it in a black garbage bag, just like the extortionist had said to do. And again, we had our teams in place, and we started towards Glidden.
After you get to Glidden, then what happened?
We were in Glidden, and then he gets either a text message or a phone call, I don't remember which one, saying, make it to Boone, Walmart and Boone.
So, Sheriff, let me back up for a second. From Sac City to Glidden is approximately how long does it take to get there?
I'm going to say 30 minutes.
Okay. And you got to Glidden right around what time?
I'm gonna say somewhere around 7 p.m.
Okay. And after you guys arrived in Glidden, then what happened?
We had our surveillance team set up in different parts of the town, because we really didn't know where this was going to happen at. And he gets a message, I don't know if it was, I think it was a phone call saying meet me at Walmart and Boone. We then pulled our team in, and we had surveillance teams from different law enforcement agencies, so I wanted to make sure that they were able to go to Boone, so we met at the cemetery, and everybody said, yep, we're in. So I left and headed to Boone and meet up with the Boone police to bring them up to speed. And then once we made contact with them, then Randy left for Boone.
Okay. And after you guys arrived in Boone, do you recall approximately what time you arrived in Boone?
Not without looking at something, I don't. It would have been sometime around 8 o'clock, I'm going to say.
Okay. And we're at in Boone. Wow, it's a horrible question. Where were you set up in Boone once you arrived?
I set up on, there's like a Country Inn Buffet or something. I was up there meeting with Boone Police and the Boone County Sheriff's Office. Deputy Garrett was assigned to Randy Aschinger, and they were sitting in the Walmart parking lot.
Okay. And what happened next?
At some point, there's some phone conversations between Brian Aaron and I. He says the battery's going dead on the bug. He was having a hard time hearing what Randy was saying, so they go into Walmart to get some new batteries, and I think Randy had to use the facilities. And while they were in there, he gets a call giving him directions on where to go.
Now back up to the GPS. Explain to the jury, those that don't know, what is a GPS tracker? How does that work?
We have access to a GPS, a global positioning system, and the system we were using, we have in-car computers in our cars, so we can monitor it, and you can set it up to do real-time tracking, or give you an update every 5 minutes, or every 10 minutes, or all sorts of things. So we had this system set up on real-time tracking so that we could look at our computer screen and see exactly where our GPS tracker was at. And it brings up a map of where you're at. So, you know, when you were looking at it, you knew you're at Highway 30 and Story Street and you were headed north. So we were able to track it that way.
And on that day that you used this, is April 13th, was the GPS device in good working order?
Yes, it was.
Okay. At what point do you activate, turn that on?
I believe we turned it on before we even left Sac City.
Okay. And if I missed it, can you explain again where you put that GPS tracker?
That GPS tracker was put in like a blue backpack, and then that blue backpack was tied into a black garbage bag.
And is that the same setup in which the money was put in?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so you're in Boone, parking lot, Randy's in the parking lot. And what's the next course of action, or what happens next?
Once we figured out where the directions where he was supposed to go, we tried to get our resources put into place. Randy had left, and I was tracking him on the tracker. You could see him go up to Park Street, down to Park Street. He stopped for just a very short period of time, and then all of a sudden the GPS tracker shows it going down into this park. It was actually Herman Park is what we later found out it was. And you could see it moving down through the park. We were having communications issues, imagine that, but we were having communications issues communicating with the Boone Police on our radio frequencies. So we all converged on the park. We had 2 canine dogs that were trying to do a track. We probably had a half dozen cops in this park. We found the bag, we found the tracker, we found the money, but we didn't find any suspects.
Sheriff, I'm showing you what I've marked as State's Exhibit 10. Can you review that and tell me what it is? Excuse me, tell the jury what it is.
State's Exhibit 10 is the live tracker report. It gives the date and the time that the unit was activated, and it gives it the addresses, and it gives the latitude and longitude. There's several pages of that, and then on the back of this there are a couple maps that have circles with arrows, and that's the actual direction that the GPS tracker and the actual route it took.
And the several pages that you described at the very beginning, what does that show? I'm looking at an Excel spreadsheet that has a number of different columns and rows. What does each row show?
Well, the first row is a device, and that's the Iowa DPS new micro, and that's the name of that they named this GPS tracker. We got the tracker through the Iowa Public Safety. The other next column is the date and time, which is going to show the date and the time that it's moving. Speed, it shows the speed. So when you're driving down the road, you can see how fast Randy was driving. The heading, which is the direction north, south, east, or west. The amount of time you were stopped, it has park time, that's how long you were idle. And then it gives you estimated addresses, closest addresses to where you're actually at. And then the final two columns are the latitude and longitude.
And all the items and information contained in State's Exhibit 10 were produced from software used in conjunction with the GPS tracker?
Yes.
Okay, and having reviewed these fairly and accurately depict the movements of the GPS tracker on April 13, 2013.
Yes.
State would move to offer State's Exhibit 10.
No objection.
See,
So, Sheriff, at some point in time, Randy makes the drop. Approximately what time was that?
Sometime after 9 p.m. I mean, without looking at exact time, it was right around 9 p.m.
Okay, and then you observed the GPS tracker then doing what at around that time?
It's just a red dot. When it's stopped, when it's moving, it's green, and then when it's stopped, it's red, and it was just a red dot. Kind of reminds you like an octagon from a stop sign.
And you observed this red dot moving in what direction?
It was headed south. Well, the green arrows were moving south through Herman Park, and then when it stopped, it was red.
And this is after Randy had dropped the money?
Yes.
Okay. And then you indicated that it stopped?
Yes.
Well, what did law enforcement do then after it stopped?
We converged in the park to try to locate.
And when you say converge, what do you mean converge?
Well, all the law enforcement units that were involved in the surveillance all went into the park,
Were you able to find, excuse me, go ahead, sorry.
and we searched the area.
Were you able to find the bag, the tracker?
Yes,
And where was that located?
underneath a tree.
Approximately how far in feet or yards from where the money was dropped?
It was about halfway through the park. It was dark. We didn't measure the distance from the road to where we found it.
Sure. But it had moved.
Right.
Do you recall how long it was on the move?
Just a very short time, a matter of minutes.
Okay. So you find the bag, you find the money, you find the person that's carrying it,
No,
and then in the course of converging, were there any incidents involving accidents with law? Okay, go ahead and explain that.
we had one of the Boone County Sheriff's Office, their canine car lost control and went down into a ravine and hit a tree, responding to this.
And was the deputy okay?
Yes,
Did you also have help via airplane?
yes, we had aerial surveillance as well.
Tell me what happens then after the unsuccessful attempt to capture the individual.
We left Boone, we returned back to Sac City. I believe 2 days later, been a Monday, I met with Randy Aschinger again, gave him his money back, we recovered his money. And then we started again subpoenaing more cell phone records.
And specifically, do you recall whose phone records you subpoenaed?
The cell phone number that Randy was getting these messages from, during the first subpoena, we determined that was an AT&T prepaid phone that had no subscriber information. We also subpoenaed Andy Menken's phone records. And then again, we extended our subpoena on those records.
Showing you what I identified as State's Exhibit 1. Can you tell the jury what that?
These are cell phone records of Andy Menken from February 1st, 2013, and they end on April 16th, 2013.
And what's that phone number?
319-404-5948.
Now, did you have that number?
Yes,
You had that in your personal phone?
Yes.
Why did you have it in your personal phone?
because Andy was a friend and we worked together. Sometimes we need to converse back and forth about work-related things.
Handing you State's Exhibit 2, already entered into evidence. Can you tell the jury what that is, please?
Number 2 is the subpoena records from the track phone, that 319-610-7398 phone.
Okay, when you say track phone, what do you mean by track phone?
It was the AT&T prepaid phone.
Okay, and I believe you said that there was no subscriber info connected to that?
That is correct.
What's the significance of that?
The significance of that is you can go to Walmart, Target, or any place and buy these and not have a record of who it belongs to.
The records contained in State's Exhibit 2 are those for the phone number that had been calling Randy
Yes,
as Bob Walters.
yes.
Following this Saturday, you continued your investigation. At what level, what happened next?
We, once we got the updated cell phone records, I really was interested in the cell phone usage for the night of the 13th. We received those records from Andy Menken's phone and from this AT&T phone. Once we got those records, we were able to generate a cell tower report, which shows exactly what cell tower the phones were being used at any given time.
And what are those records indicating?
For the night of the 13th, we could show that Andy Menken's phone was in Des Moines, Urbandale, up to Ames, and that it was used in Boone from 9 o'clock to 9:37 that night. And then the next record of his cell phone is like 2 hours later, and it's clear down on 141. And then we track it all the way across 141 all the way to Coon Rapids and ended somewhere around midnight. The AT&T phone we put in Ames at about 7:15 that night, and we also put that in Boone at about 8:43 that night.
And Sheriff, when you say you put it in there, what do you mean by you put it in there?
Cell phone records show the tower placement, that phone was using the tower in Boone and using a tower in Ames at that given time.
And in your experience in dealing with phone records and investigations, dummy it down as best you can, how does the cell phone tower work? In other words, I'll rephrase that. You're saying that these records are hitting off towers in Boone, right?
Yes,
How do we know that they're not hitting off towers in Missouri?
because when you use your cell phone, it hits the closest tower.
Okay.
And then that record, the cell phone companies maintain that record.
Oh, yes.
Sheriff, I'm showing what's been marked as State's Exhibit 11. And State's Exhibit 12. Can you tell me what those two things are and identify specifically which is which?
State's Exhibit 11 is the cell phone tower report for the AT&T phone, and it shows that at 8:48 it was using a tower in Boone on April 13th. Prior to that, I was using a tower in Ames on April 13th at 7:17 p.m. State's Exhibit 12 is the cell phone tower placement report for Andy Menken's phone. And it starts at about 6:13 that night down in West Des Moines, and it puts him in Boone. I'm sorry, let me back up. Goes up through Ames at like 5 minutes to 7 that night. There's 2 towers hit, or two times it was hit. And then it shows it in Boone from 21:01, which is 9:01 p.m. to 9:37 p.m. in Boone. And then again, you'll see it goes down further south, starts at 11:23 p.m. And you can follow that all the way across 141 back to Coon Rapids.
So what appears to be a city is identified on the picture, those 2 exhibits. What is that? That's the city of Boone?
The city of Boone on Exhibit 11 and the city of Ames.
Okay, and then Exhibit 12?
Exhibit 12 has a bunch of cities.
Okay.
Has, looks like Des Moines metro area, Ames, Boone, Coon Rapids.
Okay. I'm going to have you mark on that. Your best penmanship, could you identify State's Exhibit 12 where Boone and Ames are? And if you could identify, oh, that's sufficient. 1 second. One last question about the record, Sheriff. In the boxes on which you indicated the calls were referenced on Exhibit 12, those contain a series of numbers. The first series being
The time,
in military time?
military time.
And is that Central Standard Time?
Yes.
Okay. And as far as the second part?
Not a clue.
Okay. That's okay.
If I had to speculate, I'd say they're tower numbers, but
Okay,
I
I
don't
don't want you speculating. And then the calls referenced on State's Exhibit 11, are those all Central Standard Time also?
Yes.
Okay. This time the state would move to admit Exhibits 11 and 12 into evidence.
No objection.
Received.
I want to show you State's Exhibit 1 and 2 again, which have been identified as Andy Menken's cell phone records as 1, and 2 is that prepaid AT&T phone, State's Exhibit 2. Those both in Central Time?
Yes.
Okay. Speed of phone records, you compile them, you take in all this information. What happens next in this investigation?
Elizabeth Aschinger called and wanted to talk with me.
Did you speak with her?
Yes.
Did you interview her?
Yes.
Following your, do you recall approximately when you interviewed her?
No.
Okay. After that, then, did you have occasion to interview the defendant?
Yes.
Tell me how that came about.
I called Andy and said I needed to talk to him, and he agreed to come up.
Do you remember approximately what day that was?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Several weeks after?
Yes, it was after the 13th.
You interviewed Andy where at?
In the Sac County Sheriff's Office in interview room number 1.
Okay, and the recording device is in interview room 1?
Yes, there are.
What kind of recording devices?
Both video and audio recording.
And who participated in the interview of defendant?
Myself, Brian Arrett, and Andy Menken.
And you indicated the interview was recorded?
Yes.
How did the meeting with Andy Menken, the interview with Andy Menken, how did that come about and why?
We were wrapping up our investigation. We had the cell phone records from the 13th, and we had received our tower mapping. We knew from the very beginning that Randy Aschinger suspected Andy Menken as being involved in this. Our cell phone records show that Andy Menken was in Boone at the exact same time we were there on the night of the 13th. So we were concluding our investigation and wanted to wrap it up with an interview of Andy.
Prior to coming into court today, did you have occasion to review the video as well as the transcript to that video?
Some of it, yes.
Okay. Sheriff, I can't hand you the exhibit, but as you indicated, the interview was recorded.
Yes.
Okay. This time, the state would offer into evidence Andy Menken's recorded audio-video interview.
At this time, Your Honor, I am going to pose objection to playing the recorded interview of Andy Menken for the basic reason that I've seen it, and I don't notice that there's any indication that the sheriff or anyone in his department had read Mr. Menken his rights. He is given no understanding that he has the right to counsel. He has no understanding that he has the right to his protection from self-incrimination. He is placed in a small interview room with the door shut. There are two armed and uniformed officers standing around him, and I think under those circumstances, before his statements can be used in this court against him, he should have been given his Miranda rights.
You're assuming that the custodial relationship existed.
The circumstances indicate to me that a reasonable person could assume or have reasonable fear that they are being held in a custodial situation.
Wouldn't that have been appropriate for a motion to suppress?
They would have.
You chose not to?
At the time, I didn't know that the DVD was going to be played at this proceeding. I was given the DVD with the understanding that it was for my information.
Okay. Well, I think we're going to take a 15-minute break right now, and I'll see counsel in chambers so folks can get up and relax, stretch a little bit. Get a glass of water or something. We'll reconvene quarter to.
Please stand.